Welcome to Relove Guitars. It's a Sunday night and it's December. Steady on now, come on. Steady, there, stay there. Actually stay there but move a little bit. There's good blanks. So what have we got here on the bench tonight? Looks like somebody bled at a gig. Ew. This is Stu's Martin. I think it's called an HD28, is it? I think it is, but anyway, it's a Martin D28, and it's an interesting one because as you might notice there's something there. We'll come back to that. So this is the kind of guitar that exercises people, gets people hot under the collar. So it's an expensive guitar, right? It's not a cheap budget guitar, it's a Martin, and it has a beautiful voice to it. There's no doubt about that. Sounds gorgeous. And this guitar is second-hand. Probably had two owners. And it's probably about 4 years old. And the problem it has is that it has run out of adjustment for the action. Now, there's a debate on this. Not everybody. There's a school of thought that says, look, you see here these here Martin premium, nice, well-made guitars. They're beautifully made and so on and so on. And here's your saddle, look, and it's still, there's a bit of room to adjust in there, but we're running out of. We're going to eventually run out of brake angle over the saddle there. Now it's not gone yet, but the more you adjust, the sooner it eventually runs out. So the question is, when you get a guitar like this, is what do you recommend or what do you advise a customer? What do I advise a customer? So there is an issue here about what are the actual physical options, right? So the physical options, I suppose, depend on what your take is on what causes the action to rise on a guitar like this. So you can get a straight edge, which I have done, and you can put the edge across there, and you can see if you go to one end completely, it's actually about 12 millimeters. 12 millimeters. Actually, sorry, not 12, 6. Good, clear 6 millimeters. I wrote it up on the board, and that's 3 on either side, being generous. Now, so you've got a top that's a little bit bellied. And then the first question that people raise, and I don't know any of the answers to this. All I know is what I found over the years of researching, and obviously the answers I've got from there, which aren't thoroughly convincing in some ways. But so before you explode and shout all over the top of this video, just hear me out. So as somebody who sees a lot of acoustic guitars and electric guitars, and is a sort of rational person, I go on the logic of something and what I see and the evidence I find, and I evaluate evidence I find rather than take anything at face value. So I look at this, and the first thing I know is that there's a degree of bellying on the back, and you can see it, you measure it. I think 6 millimeters being generous, but let's call it 3 on either side. So now there's assumption, we could make an assumption here and say, well, we're assuming the top should be dead flat. And many makers of acoustic guitars say this isn't the case. But in the research I've done, the types of figures that I'm quoted when you hear a custom guitar maker aiming for a curved top, the radius they give for the curvature of the top, right, is given in figures like 1 in 20, not 1 in 20, the 25 foot radius, right? So you think of a radius of the board up there, whatever it is, 12 inches or 14 inches radius. I'm not sure on this one, but you look at the radius up there and you go, well, that's a matter of inches, okay? And you can see the curvature. Now try and imagine 25 foot as your radius. That's a 300-inch radius, near enough. That's a huge radius, and if you were to make a straight edge across there on a 25-foot radius, I could work it out probably. I'm not very good with maths, but I doubt if you'd see more than a millimeter on either side as your sort of normal curvature, as measured by. So you wouldn't get a lot. and this is clearly more than this curvature on this top is this part at the top measured. I measure it on the edge of here basically. Is considerably more than the 25-foot radius. So okay, you can't. I haven't found an answer as to what Martin radius is, and it's quite difficult to find online what the answer to that is. But either which way, we could argue about that all day, and some people do. But the problem you've got is a guitar that is perhaps no more than 4 years old. It finds itself in a state of play where the low E last fret action, which is where I measure it, don't worry about that, but that's 3.5 millimeters, and on the other side it's 2.5. Okay, and we've got some bellying down at the back, and we've got this doesn't like the colours, it doesn't like the light, sorry. And down the back here we've got a fairly limited range of play as far as the reductions on the saddle go. Now so sorry, this is running around a bit. So some people will say they have different views about what causes the bellying. So some people, first of all, would kind of deny that it's even bellying. They'd say that's kind of how it's supposed to be made. What do you know? And I say, well, what if your customer thinks 3.5 millimeters here is too high, and it feels pretty high? So what do you do if that's how it is for you, and you prefer a lower action than that? What's your options? Well, if you're telling me that this is perfectly normal, right, and we're pretty much running out of room here to make adjustments, what's your options? What are your options? Well, your options then must be to take it and have it reset. And that's possible, and that might cost you between £400 and £600. I've had a fly around in here, which I could put in now. I guess if you took the neck off, reshimmed the angles, I'm presuming you have to shim both angles because you're changing both. It's a heel like that, or an angle, so it's going to need to be reduced here if it's improved there, or reduced here if you're raising it up, which is more likely, and then you're going to need something under here. That's quite a tricky calculation. And then what would you achieve? Well, you would achieve a better action. Suddenly you'd have the neck angle recalculated. It would meet the strings better off this bridge as it stands. But that's, you could call it £400 to £600 for an adjustment of the action, and you've still got a bellying here on the bridge to some degree, which, as far as the customer convinces me, it has increased. So we know that whatever's causing this bellying is, sorry about the colours, looks like it's increasing over time. So you spend £400 to £600 adjusting the angle, and here basically rebuilding the angle between the neck and the body, and you're doing it to a guitar whose belly is still continuing to rise and taking it with it the bridge. If you think about this, if there's 6 millimeters on the far, on one side, if there's at least 2, probably 3 millimeters too high on either side, 6 millimeters, it equates to a rise of 3 millimeters here. If because we're measuring from the center of the hump, so we're saying that the bridge has gone up 3 millimeters at least in the time since it's come out of the factory, resulting in a raise in the action here. And are we saying that the only possible solution is to take apart the angle here, recalculate the neck angle, reset it for all that money, and then wait until this rises a couple more mils, and then we're again out of adjustment room, and then if we don't like it, we spend another £400-600 on getting it reset? I think that seems kind of extreme to me. Most players, most players or techs will know that a much less expensive way of adjusting a temporarily rising action is to make an adjustment through the saddle. Now, yes, I get there are some caveats about that. The only one that really makes much sense to me is as you reduce the saddle height here, you change the break angle of the strings. Now, there are a couple of points that are obvious in that, common sense tells us. The first one being is that if you go too flat, you'll reduce the downward pressure on the saddle, which will reduce the transmission or lessen the transmission of vibrations through to the top. That's a possibility. Again, I find it very difficult to find any absolute provable, reliable figures about this, or dimensions, or settings, if you like. So, I think what that results in is that every tech or every luthier in the world will have a different idea what's the minimum break angle you can get away with, and they will insist that's the case. But I agree in principle that if you go too low with this and the break angle becomes too small, you're either going to reduce the amount of downforce on here and transmission with a potential impact of how it transmits vibration into the top, which you don't want, or at the extreme case, it gets so low, the saddle here becomes so low that there's practically no contact with the saddle at all of the string, and in which case it becomes effectively dead, or it's playing off here. That's the sort of two obvious things. Another one, of course, if you go too low, you end up with this string sitting practically on the wood of the bridge, which in itself isn't the end of the world, except it puts the intonation point about 5mm forward, which you don't want. So obviously there is a constraint or limitation in how far you can go down with the saddle if you want to make adjustments. Now, the advantages of making adjustments through the saddle is that you can do it, particularly if you look at this, you've got a high action here and you've got a pretty high saddle here. This one isn't so high, it's been done before by the looks of it. Oh, this one hasn't got one. Yeah, right. But I've got one at home. In fact, it's Andy P's other guitar that I'm doing for him, an Ozark parlor guitar, which has quite a lot more room in the saddle. So that I would look at and go, yeah, absolutely no problem. Take down the saddle, charge you a lot less for a setup than having a neck reset. But obviously the advice to the customer is if it continues to rise, there will, as with all acoustic guitars, you will come to a point where this has to be the thing that's reset. Now, so when I have a guitar like this, I'm conscious of several things. You have to weigh them all up in your mind. One is, if I reduce the saddle on here and opt for a less expensive way of giving the customer back a better playing action, that has a consequence. Maybe it starts to lessen the pressure on the top and so on and so forth. That has potentially some consequences. I have to be aware of those, and the customer does, right? If let's say we're down at a place here where the customer wants a slight increase in action, but this is starting to get marginal with the break angle, the question I have is, can I give them back that break angle and still lower the saddle any? Well, you can by making a very small notch in front of the peg holes here, which allow the string to come up more steeply from its position underneath there. And actually that's a pretty easy way of gaining back enough break angle to allow you to do another couple of mils adjustment on here. Oh God, sorry colours. I don't know what's wrong with this thing. Anyway, I don't know if there's any button I can press to stabilize it. It seems to just be going crazy with the reflections. Anyway, so the question I've got here is, well, okay, that you probably immediately thought, oh, he's talking about a destructive thing on the bridge here. Well, yeah, that's true. That's possible. Okay, so you say to your customer, depending on what you have to spend, what your budget is, how much you need this action improvement, here are a couple of alternatives. So you say, this is fairly low brake angle right now, but I've measured it, and I have. So there's 2 millimeters gap between the top of this saddle here and the ebony of the, it looks like ebony, of the bridge. And here there's 2.45, 2.5 millimeters gap. So technically, there's at least a millimeter on either side that we could work with. What we know is that it reduces the brake angle, so we could regain that with a very short slot here in front of the critical strings. You could do it in front of all of them to make it look even, or you could just do it in front of the critical ones, which tend to be the high E and the B. And in fact, in this case, they're actually all pretty consistent. So that's an option. We can do that. Cost of that, well, downside is you get these slight notches. Would that have an impact on selling the guitar? Well, maybe. Somebody would say, oh, that's been done that way to gain a better playing action. Tusk, I don't want to pay as much. Well, okay, so you tell your customer that's a potential consideration. The other thing we haven't talked about is, given that your customer's guitar from new, although they're not the first owner, but from new, this guitar has developed some bellying by the looks of it, and the action has risen. I mean, whether we believe this was bellied like this or not when it came out of the factory, I tend to believe that, or I tend to think that it's done so over the time due to string loading. But what is true is this action's higher than I would like it. So what do I do? Even if it wasn't for a customer, if it was my guitar, well, what are my options? Well, either get the neck reset or try and get this flattened out. That's a question. Can that be done? And at the same time, in the short term, perhaps reduce the saddle a little bit more. Those are the only viable options I've got, other than spending $400 to $600, and I can't see it cost. I can't see it being done well for $400. I wouldn't do it for £400, even if I did that sort of thing, which I don't. It's just not worth the time. The amount of precision and time and expertise it takes to reset this neck is, to me, it's easily a £500 job. But if your customer wants that done, I absolutely recommend it. Say no, if that's your preference, go down that route. But sitting here today, so I've had these conversations with my customer, and I've said, I can give you a hack reduction with a couple of things. First of all, I can take this down as it stands without doing anything to the brake angle. And see what we've got. How does it play? How does it sound? How does it feel? What I can do, whether this is done as a reset or whether it's done by a bit of action adjustment in the remaining saddle room, whichever way we do it, one of the things we want to do is to stop this thing bellying up, which is basically the string loading pulling at the, well, it's pulling at the about the middle of the bridge, but the sort of it tends to put, because it's pulling this way, the bridge tends to rotate around its front edge if it can. So it's trying to go, the bridge is trying to go that way. It can't go that way because it's glued on. So what it tends to do is pull up, just as the neck also can't go that way. But if it can't go that straight towards the bridge, it will pull upwards a little bit as well. And that's the sort of folding up that seems to be happening on all acoustic guitars to some degree or other. So what I have suggested, and it's based on recommendation by StewMac, is this device called the Bridge, well, it's called the Bridge Doctor System, or the Bridge System. It's commonly known as the Bridge Doctor, when in fact technically it isn't the Bridge Doctor. The Bridge Doctor is it's a similar thing, but uses brass pins, and you hold the thing down with a series of brass pins. This is called the Bridge System, which is pretty clever. So how it works is, probably do with a drawing. Let's do a quick drawing on the board right up here where you can probably see it. Maybe impossible to see. In fact, I've got a couple of things sticking here in the way. Let's get them out of the way. I will need the instructions to Bridge Doctor just to be sure. Okay, so let's show you how it works. Now, the only reason I ever used one of these before was primarily because StewMac, who I trust as luthiers who know what they're talking about, they recommend it. So what we've got is a top, and we've got a bridge on it with some pegs and some things, okay? And that is under massive load, all the force pulling that way, okay, as we know. And what we've seen is that as it tries to pull the bridge that way, what really happens is that the bridge tries to pull that way and it ends up pulling up a little bit like this, okay? But in doing so, it pulls up the top with it. So I'm going to now rub that bit out, and that's what we've got, this strange hump. And that's what people refer to as bellying, which has got a sort of, yeah, a pot belly sticking out. And it settles, or, you know, under load, it kind of ends up in that position. And what that does is it raises the bridge, if you like, by a certain amount. So this action, I haven't drawn it going up, but this action actually then goes up with it, and so consequently the string action rises as well. Now what the bridge doctor does is pretty amazing. Oh, sorry, the bridge system, JLD Bridge System, is that you basically put this you basically connect this thing, you drill a hole here like that, and this is very exaggerated, okay, you drill a hole there and you put a screw through here into a thing that's screwed already into there, okay, and that's pretty cool. So that makes the bridge extend quite a long way below. This is all wood, and the wood has a hole through it, and through the hole we push a rod. Actually, it's not quite like that. Through the hole we basically push a rod which presses against the solid back post of the guitar, and then into this little arrangement goes a grub screw which sits and presses against this block, and as you turn that grub screw, it pushes against the rod, but it pushes the whole of this unit that way. Yeah, so it's trying to move the whole unit away from the back end, and in doing so you can imagine what happens is it pulls this back end down. So as it rotates, it straightens up, and as it straightens up, not very good drawing now, it causes the bridge to come back down. You get the sort of drift? So it's a physical prevention of the bridge rising anymore and stopping the belly, the top of the guitar bellying anymore. So the idea about this is that it not only will it stop it, it's basically, think of it, it's just a mechanical support to counter the string pull. So the string pull is constant. Why do I keep dropping on the floor? Something, I don't know what that was, an unused screw. So string is constant, strings are constantly pulling even when it's in its nice warm case, and that over the years pulls the bridge into that sort of angle which rises the action. The bridge doctor not only kind of stops it at that point, it actually, as you tighten it up, it generally tends to slowly and over time, possibly, but certainly in the short term, it tends to straighten this out a little bit. And the idea is that if it'll both arrest any further pull in this direction, so it'll counter any further rotation, it'll stop it, and if we're lucky, it will gently counter the bending that's already happened and cause a flattening, a slight flattening, or a lot of flattening. Now I am ambiguous about this because I haven't had one long enough in a guitar to test the long-term effects, and this is why I've acquired this one here. I'm going to glue that. It's got a bridge. There it is. Just was donated to me by a member of the band I've just joined, actually. But it's going to be a long-term test, so I'm going to refit the bridge, load it all up under normal play. The bridge came off because the top was bellied, and I'm going to let it go back into its bellying, and I'm going to fit a long-term bridge system test, to just see how well it works over the long time. And obviously I can take measurements and make sure of it. So the issue about the bridge system is, well, okay, that sounds okay, and people will have concerns. They'll go, well, how does that affect my tone? Some people have reported that it improves their tone and the projection of the guitar. Some people, you'll get it on any forum, have insisted that it changes it in a way they don't like. We can't know. The jury is out. It's subjective. Some people who just know that it's been done will insist that it's changed the sound for the worse. Some people who know that it's been done will say it's improved it. I don't know anyone who's done any real blind tests to show. But let's just pull back a minute. We're talking about a bellying of a structure under string loading, which, despite being a premium guitar, when you look and you saw the construction of the bracing and stuff, it's obviously a losing battle over time for the structure of the guitar, and I see that all the time. And we can argue to the blue in the face about, well, a Martin should look like that. Well, yeah, a Martin should be built like that, but should it, within 4 years, be playing at a height that a customer finds is uncomfortably high and has worsened? Well, the answer's got to be no. If the bracing and the structure is up to the task, the answer has to be no. It can't require a reset, almost from the off in its life. 30 years down the line, yes. I mean, we're expecting progressive distortion, but the very fact that it's known that after 30 years the structure of the guitar will have distorted enough to require a neck reset is another admission that it's not up eternally to the task. It's just quite simple. The only question is how soon or how far later in the day that this has to happen. So anyway, coming back from that, where the hell do we go with this? Well, my conclusion, and this is only on the say-so of my customer, I've given them as clear an estimation as I can about the cost and the implications of a neck reset, and said, I don't do those. But if you're happy to go and do that, please, find somebody, or I can find somebody who will, and book it in with them. Or there are these less expensive ways of gaining back some playability, or improving the playability in the very short term at a cost. And the cost is we have to drill a hole in here to fit this device, and we may have to put tiny slots, notches in front of these exit holes to allow the strings to change if we need to gain back a little bit of the break angle. But those are the costs, and whether you have the neck reset or you do it in the sort of slightly hack way to gain the last bit of improvement, then I still recommend that we put in the bridge system and ask it to do the job of preventing further distortion, and with a bit of luck counter some of it. Now, you might say, well, hang on, if you take this down any further and you put little notches in and this does change the thing, what's going to happen? Well, what will happen is, if we are lucky and that it counters some of this bellying and our action immediately lowers, then actually you're quite right, we probably wouldn't need the notching, and in fact if it did it really well, we might actually have to switch back to a taller saddle. But that's not a big deal if we're successful. If it doesn't change any further, well, we're stuck with the lowered saddle, and that's fine. We've got as good a playing action as we can get. So what I think the sensible way to go forward with this is, on all the options available, fit the bridge doctor. We've taken measurements, fit the bridge doctor, put it back under load with the same strings in the same condition, and then just look again, what have we got? Is the action exactly the same? Has it countered any of the curvature, the bellying? Has it rotated back a tiny bit? Now, if the answer was yes, we've gained back a bit of playing action straight away, then actually we may find that we don't need to further adjust this. We may just achieve that from the bridge system itself. But that requires a commitment to drilling this hole and fitting this system. Now, that essentially came back to the customer, who said to me the following: this is not a guitar I'm going to sell. I love the tone of this. I want to play this. I don't want to spend 600 quid getting it neck reset to gain back a playable action. I don't mind if you put notches in there. I don't mind if you drill a hole and fit a bridge system in there. As long as I get a better playing action for now, and I don't have to spend a fortune getting it reconfigured, reset. And I think that you can only go on what your customer says, in knowing that you've told them what the implications are. You've gone through all of that with them, and so that's the position I'm at. I'm going to begin by fitting the Bridge Doctor bridge system, and so to do that, what they give you is they give you a screw to fit, which will go through there and hold the system on, which goes into this nylon thing here. Sorry, goes into that nylon thing there. In fact, it should be that way around, and then through there goes this stick, which eventually you measure the correct length. It presses against the back wall above this thing here. I think it's above. Let's just make sure. Or it might just be slightly below it, or it might end up being slightly to the side of it, but we have to accommodate around that. It might be just below. But I'll make sure. So we end up fitting that under there, and then we put in the grub screw and we tighten and push the block outwards and counter rotate. Now normally they give you a little mother of pearl, or they give you a mother of pearl to cover up this screw hole. What I've done is I've got some ebony from a build I'm making at the moment, the fretboard, and I have made myself a series, of which this is one, a series of little ebony plugs, and this is 7mm wide. So I will drill the hole for that screw to go through, but I will make an additional hole at 7mm for this plug, which I will then put in, and we'll basically very carefully trim back to flush, so it will be practically invisible. But we'll know it's under there, and also we'll know that if we ever want to take it out, we have to dig that little hole, that little fill out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put the bridge system in, and so it's a slow thing. All their measurements are in millimeters, no, imperial. So you have to kind of convert if there's anything. Now the thing to do is this thing here says, ideally this pressing bit wants to press against the body underneath, just in front of the bridge. So if I line it up, and then you've got basically three holes here. They give you three options where you might position this: forward, middle and back. And actually if I just line that up there, positioning the support foot directly in front of the bridge then leaves this as the best positioning for the hole. So we're going to drill a hole, and this will be located on that, and it will place the foot of it wherever that hole sits. Now they recommend that you mark the hole, what do they say, equally halfway between the middle two what's it? It's not very good. Halfway between the middle two, I can't see it very well, but halfway between the middle two pegs and halfway between the front and back. So realistically, and just as a bit on a visual side of things, it's kind of about there. It's kind of halfway. Well, if we do it towards the back, we've got a curve we've got to take care of, which isn't the end of the world. But we sort of have approximately a sort of mark point, which is, I don't know if you can see it there, but approximately there. If we go further back, it allows us to pull this thing tight underneath the tight to the front of the bridge. What I don't know is what the shape or any things underneath there are. So I'm just going to wind in this post, if I can do it. I don't really want to hold tight. So I'm going to wind in the nylon post till it's nice and stiff. And I'm going to place it here and say, well, where would the hole be if we were just right snug close to the front? And that would actually be even further towards the back. So if I say to myself, let's try and avoid as much of the curvature of that as possible, because there's no real, it's hard to drill and do anything we need to do on a curve. So if I come back and put the middle in line with the center of this, it's going to be more in that position there. That will do. And then center to these two things, I am going to do it, just to begin with, by I. And that gives us there. You can probably see that now. There's our mark. So that would be the start point. And to prepare for this, we need a 7mm. What was the diameter of this top? I think it is 6.5mm. The countersunk screw. So that needs that will sit into the 7mm hole. So we know we've made a 7mm plug, a 7mm hole, but we have to go all the way through with a 3.5mm or 4 to make enough clearance, which then goes into the top of there and holds this firmly in place through there. So obviously I'm not going to be able to do this with the strings on, so I think we need to take them off. So let me just do that. Oh, by the way, here's the grub screw. Where is it? Where? That's the thing. Here's the grub screw sitting on there. When I get the top off, the strings off, I'll be able to ascertain, make sure that we've got clearance all round to get the tensioning rod to the back without running into the jack plug barrel or anything like that. So these aren't fantastic strings anyway, so we're going to replace these with elixir strings. So there's going to be a tonal difference from the outset anyway, just because of that. Having said that, you know, I think the break angle on here, from my own experience, is playable, and it will be playable even after an adjustment. Now, even if we have to do an adjustment, let's say that the bridge system doesn't do any reduction, but just helps to stop any further distortion. But like I say, I've got, my guitar at home has almost no break angle at all, and it plays pretty well. So, you know, again, if we say, look, I want an action reduction, but I really don't want to cut any notches into there, we can still say, fine, that's absolutely cool, we'll do that, and we'll just take the hit on the break angle, and we'll set it up, and we'll see that if you can hear it or sense any difference, or then we'll reconsider. But if it plays with the greatly reduced break angle and it gives you back the guitar action you want for the least amount of destructive, inverted commas, damage, then fair dues. That's not a bad result. Okay, so here are all our pegs out, and here are our strings out. Let's put a quick loop in those, put them off to one side, stay. Okay, so first of all, let's just remove this. Now remember, I'm not going to do anything to this saddle. Somebody's already marked this saddle, cut it back, and actually held back from going as far as they really wanted. So this is a very deep slot in here. You know, but that's not really, doesn't really matter now. What matters, I mean, the good thing about having a deep slot is that you don't get any rock from the bridge, which is really good, but we may end up reducing it, but right now we're not going to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a feel under here to make sure that I've got clear space in front of this thing, which I have. That's fine. The question is how much. I think that will stand on the front of the bridge plate. That's good. Now my only concern is to make sure that's standing on the front of the bridge plate. That's actually quite a bit lower than there, so that will take us down to yeah, we'll be the rod, the tensioning rod, will be well underneath the jack socket barrel. Right. So the first question, or the first challenge we've got, is to mark our start point here, and I know where it's going to sit. I can see the centre of that. It's going to put that right there. That's good. Let's just make sure, if I draw a line or put a bit of tape on here, let's just make sure we are as close to equidistant as we can be. Actually a little bit difficult to do with a square edge. Get on there, you devil. So let's see if I can do it on here. Okay, so I've chosen that spot there, and there's a right angle. I think that's nearly perfectly between the two, and then we had a spot of there. That's probably a tiny fraction forward, just to make my life easier, which then still pushes the center point, or the support point, to a workable place. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'll get my poke device and make a mark in the bridge. And that means I can remove this, and there's my little mark. Now this will, because of the curvature in this, when the plug goes in, it will require a bit of carving and sanding to go over the top, but that's fine. Now there's a recommendation, or an exhortation when you do this, to not use an electric drill for one part of this. So you can drill to go all the way through, but for the bit that we want to put the 7mm countersink in, if you like, it really says don't use a power drill, because it will tear the hell out of it. So for example, if we get we've got options here. If we get a brad point drill, let's measure the diameter of this. Probably says, but hey, that's a 6, right? But you know, the thing about a brad point is, first of all, it will give you a cleaner start. Whoops, a cleaner start in there. Now I don't have a hand drill, so I might actually do it literally by hand, like that. So that's a start with a brad point drill, but we want a 7mm one to create the correct hole. Find the 7. 692. That's the 7 in my book. So there's our 7. But we only need it deep enough to countersink the screw, and put a plug over the top. Now this, in this sense, they give you a depth, but we can work out the depth here. We can make it, we need some countersink room, and we need, it could be 4mm would be enough, including the countersink. So the countersink is a tricky one to do, because we don't have a countersink at 7mm. We have a countersink which we can use, but it requires more than we've got. In other words, if we do a 7mm hole, this thing will be at 7mm before we get down to there. So we may be struggling to get a countersink without using an HSS bit at the bottom of this. So let's get a countersink. So we want, that's a 6mm one. Just getting me things ready. What's this one? This will be an 8. No, that's a 7. Okay, so there's a 7mm HSS that could give us a bit of a countersink once we're in the bottom of this. And there's our 7mm plug. How much you can see? Not much. Which is the top side. Can't see at the moment. I think this is the top side. So the first thing we ought to do, we've got our 2 different bits here, which are our cut-ins. let's have a think. What are we going to do? We're going to drill through. Now the one that's going to go all the way through is going to be 3.5 mils. So we need a 3.5 mil bit. See what we've got. That's going to be the through 3.9. This will be 3.5. 3.5 in 3.5 is too tight. So we really want 4. But really, this is difficult. We don't really want to go through until we've drilled the countersink bit. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. My heater is still working, but it's so cold in here today that it's hanging on in there at barely 14 degrees, which is okay, but not the warmest. So here, as a guide hole, I can drill this through, and this will take me all the way through, and then I can use the hole as a can you see? I can probably need to make a little bit of a deeper hole on there. Probably going to do a tap with a thing. Or can I press it a bit further? It's quite a dense wood. Alternatively, I can do a hand drill. I can see a good start point. Now, this needs to be, yes, as vertical as possible. Can we put this vertically on a pillar drill of any kind? Not really, because you've got a bent back. There's also something loose rattling around in here. Come on. There we go. Whatever that was. So I think we're going to need to use as close to a vertical as we can go by hand in here. Okay. There we go. That's us through. Now we've got the thing we really want to get through this now is the countersunk hole. What I'm doing, as you can see, is I'm doing it by hand and using hopefully a sharp blade to start cutting. This is going to be the extent for our filler plug. There you go, and it's just beginning to cut in there, and by the time we hopefully get down in there, we will be in a position to get the HSS in there to just countersink the bottom of this little hole, and then once we've got that, we will drill all the way through with the 3.5 mils, following the same centre line. So again, you can see this is just a start. I think one of the things you can probably do is once you've got this started, you can use a hand drill and get a bit further in, but I think it tears. A hand drill, if you're not careful, a hand drill tends to tear at the bridge wood, so this is a good idea to do it by hand. It would be even better if I had a proper hand drill, but I don't, so I'm using my bare hands. So it's starting to cut in. I'm going to probably go off camera and do this because it could take quite a while, but as you can see, I do want to do it with the there's a quicker way of getting going, but that's still going to wander a little bit because there isn't enough of a cut in yet. This is going to take a while before it bites and gets the thing going, but I don't think I've ever drilled this by hand before, but on this one I am, because it's Stu's Martin. I mean, the important thing is, of course, we don't want this to get wider than 7, however it goes. I had to, the amusing part is I knew I had some ebony somewhere, and I knew it was at the bottom of my rubbish bin, so I had to go through my entire rubbish bin, and I got down to the level where I found the rosewood, and the ebony, which wasn't that. The ebony happened to be right at the absolute bottom. So there we go. And thankfully I hadn't dumped my rubbish, and I carried on working at it. Right, I'm going to go and blow my nose. So I'm going to stop recording, come back when I've drilled these holes and we're ready to put the doctor in. See you in a minute. So we have, sorry, clunk, bang, wallop. We have mostly hand drilled. I did a little bit of finishing off with thing, but I've installed the block under there, and if I can just show you the position of the screw. So the screw's in there, tightened up, the block's in there, sitting where it should, and there's, oops, if you can see, there's now still enough room. It's sitting on a countersink, and there's plenty enough room to put the plug over the top of it. Okay, so that, I just whiz out from there, is where we're at. Now the next bit is quite fun. I'm going to sort of go there where you can see. Now I have to take the rod, the tensioning rod, and I have to insert it into here. You can't see a darn thing, so I have to put it in here, wiggle it and waggle it until I can get it in the front end of the block, bottom end of the block. And what I'll do is, I think I'll use my other camera once I've got this thing going to just check everything's in the right place, and we'll look at a picture together. So I'm sort of clumsily lining up the rod so I can install it into the tensioning block. Right, and now I have to push it all the way back through till it hits the back here, which it has done. Then I am duty bound to draw a line, oh my lordy, where it connects, it sticks out. And the idea is we then pull it out. Well, actually no, let's take a picture of it while it's in there, and then I can show you. Photos, please. Camera, lights, action. Alright, it's only a photo. Can I see where it goes? Shoot me the photo. Go. Yeah. Interesting. Looks at it himself. Examines it. Ooh, that is interesting. This is exactly at the level. What a rubbish dark photo that is. See it? Exactly at the level of the thingy. So it's going to have to be one side or other. That's good to know, because we can put it in at a very slight slant. But we don't really have much of a choice about this. It just so happens that people who installed the Martin installed the what's it? Oh, sorry, you probably can't see a darn thing. Where Martin installed the barrel for the what's it? It happens to be exactly at the level that our thingy goes. So we can't obviously go on top of it. So we're going to have to leave it exactly where it is, and actually it's slightly to the right of it. Now, is there a possibility we can shorten it, raise it, or do any other thing? We can't extend it really. No, we're going to have to live with it just slightly off to one side. I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem, but I think we just have to get this to the right length now, get it installed, and then we'll tighten it up just to the side of the jack socket. So there's the mark that I made, and it says cut your thing off remove the tension rod, cut the rod 3/8 of an inch shorter than the mark, and that is, I've forgotten how many mils that is, 3/8 of an inch. Well, I could just copy it off my ruler, couldn't I? 3/8 of an inch. Hello, 3/8 of an inch. There's my ruler. That's 3/8. 9 mils, yeah? Is that what we say, 3/8? So if that's 4/8, that's 8/8 of an inch. Yep, 3/8 of an inch is 9.5 mils. So we're going to cut 3/8 of an inch shorter than that. Sorry if it's not good visuals. And then that's going to be our bit. But this square bit that we're cutting off is going to be the bit that pushes against the wall, the end The pointy bit is going to push against the grub screw. 3/8 of an inch. Right, coping saw please. Thank you. 3/8 of an inch cut. Let's do it. Clunk. 3/8 of an inch. Now, recognising that this probably isn't massively flat to begin with, I'm just going to sand this as flat as I can get it. Right, so next part of the fun is we go back in with this. I'll probably just do it like this. And there, run it forwards towards the front, get it in the hole. Can I get it? Yes. Yes, it's a shame that it lines up on exactly the same point. It's a curious piece of coincidence or bad luck. Come on, there you go, in there. Now it's going wherever it wants now. Right, through. Now this is going to go all the way in. I can hear it hitting the what's it, that thing. I'm going to tighten up the screw to keep it roughly in place. And then I'm going to get this grub screw, and here's the fun, I've got to get this into the end of there, tightened up without seeing it. Which way is tightened? Righty, lefty, uppy, downy, I don't know. Oh, I wish I didn't have, maybe I should try and just do it by hand to begin with, and not have the encumbrance of the hex key getting in the way. Does that want to go in? Ugh. I want to go, oh yes, that does want to go in. Right. So, here we have hex key going in. Now, this is the interesting bit. So, I'm going to just try and get this into just touching range of the end of the thing. That must be, I don't know, see I can't tell. Are we touching? Well, we don't know. So here we are. Strings off, everything as was, is was. Let us get a line across here at the back of the thing there, and we were going 6 mils, weren't we? Measurements. This is really clumsy, this sized thing. Something that will go the whole length of this, but yeah, it's a straight edge, but it's not really ideal. Okay, so what I was aiming for, sorry about the angle, I was starting out with my millimeters to hand, going to the back edge of here, touching the back edge, and going there's my distance. So that's now at 5. So it's potentially down a little bit. So let's see what happens if we put a little bit of tension into this. Don't forget we haven't concentrated on the fill of the screw hole yet. But let's see what we can do with tensioning. Find the bite point. There we are. Okay. So now I'm putting some tension into it. Who knows what it's doing. Now the instructions say blah, blah, blah. What does it say? Rotated. Normally we adjust the rod just tight enough so there's no lateral play in the rod, but the rod can be rotated between thumb and forefinger. It says though, of course, if the top needs to be flattened, that does not apply, and the screw should be tightened until the top is in a position near what it was new. So you can see from the very outset, the instructions of this device here do seem to suggest that you can make an adjustment and push the top back to where it should be from new. And I can see that this really is changing the top. Now this is of course with no string loading, that's the obvious thing, but it's, unless I'm mistaken, it appears to be coming a little bit down from where it was, so let's just lie that on the middle part. Even at its highest push, that's crap, but it's come down to about 3, so we are definitely changing the shape of the at-rest top. Now, of course, that's going to come under a lot of loading when we put the strings on it. But what I'm hoping to see is if we physically reduced the bellying, now I can only do, with the long edge of the hex key, I can only do a certain pie-sized chunk of turning at any one time. So I'm going to take it out, put it back in, take it out, put it back in, do a little 10-degree turn, put it back in, so on. But yeah, so what I'm looking for next is, with the guitar strung up, have we changed the action, and do we need to do any more destructive adjustments? Now, you know, you might be saying to me, well, how are you deciding when to stop? I'm going by the wording on the instructions of the device, saying back to where it was when it was new, close to where it was when it was new. This is improved quite a bit. Now I'm having to push quite hard to get an angle. Well, it's because the way it's flattening is that it's quite considerably less than it was. That's not bad at all. It's down to about 2. We've gone from 6 down to 2. So let's do a string up and just get a sense of what we've achieved before we do anything else. So in goes our existing, what's it? Down come our strings, our filthy strings. Let's get this back together again. Sorry, it's cold in here, so my nose is starting to run. Can't help it. Had a nice, kind of unexpected meet up with my 2 boys yesterday. Don't see them that often because of the fact where they live, and they're always busy doing their fun lives. But anyway, so yeah, I got to go up and see the oldest playing rugby, and his brother and the oldest's girlfriend were there watching. So we got to hang out with them, and then hang out with Elliot, my eldest, once he'd finished the game. And I sat and drank a cup of coffee in a nearby pub, which was short but sweet, not the coffee, the time together. Well, yeah, you know, I think we'll see an improvement straight away, but it might not be as much as we want, and we may also combine the reduction of the saddle. But remember, reduction of the saddle before doing a destructive slot. So I'm going to try it step by step, and only put the slots in it if we absolutely need it. So it's kind of good to see if we can get the improvement we want without destructive means. Now you could say, well, putting a screw into the bridge here and this device in there is destructive. Well, it's destructive, but to be honest, even if you took it out and refilled the hole with a piece of ebony, you would never know it was in there. So it's a minimal intervention. But if it stabilizes the bellying and gives Stu back a few more years playing this guitar before it heads off for an expensive neck reset, I think that'll be a good achievement. Well, that's what it will certainly be what I aimed for. And of course, what I might even do is I might glue the fill into place and just leave the fine tuning to another day, since it's a Sunday evening. But also, kind of what would be nice to do is to see this under tension for a day or so. I've got a week of that I can leave this sit, which is good because I'm not taking it back up to meet with or drop it off at Stu's until I think something like the 15th of December-ish, so that's good. I can have a sort of a slightly longer term relationship with it and see if there are any changes. I mean, I have to say, I wouldn't be massively surprised to see if the string loading managed to once again pull the thing out of shape. But because string loading is a massively powerful business, and when the wood's decided it's going to go a certain way, it tends to go that way. Now this is really peeing me off. I can't stand these sticky out bits of wire that are going to scratch the fingerboard. You go there. You snip off. They're not going to scratch the fingerboard, they're going to scratch the headstock if you let them drift round as you're tuning it back up. So what would be great is if we do get the adjustment without having to do anything else. Major outcome. If we have to do the lowering of the saddle, okay, we'll try that, and we'll go first of all without doing any slotting, and see if we can get it to play the way we want without that. And if not, then we'll consider putting the slotting in. So at every step of the way, it's the sort of least invasive technique if possible. Right, round you go. Right, so we have restrung Okay, so now we have a lower action outcome. What did we want? Well, we were targeting 2 mils at the bottom, lower E. Well, we're a bit above that. We've gained back half a mil. 3.5, we've gone to 3, and we've gone to just over 2. So we've gained back a little bit of action, but as you can tell, not the world's most. But what we don't know is how long we need to keep that going. Now, looking at this, that hex key is quite a long way into that block, and that could be, that's one of the things I noticed before, is if you cut it not too short, if you follow their instructions exactly, you can find yourself running out of rod. In other words, it could do with being about 3 millimeters longer. Still, that's what we did. We followed the instructions. I mean, it's not the end of the world. I can get some more doofa. What's that stuff? Pine or oak dowel or something, to do it. So we can have another go. Okay, so now this is back under tension, and we are. What did we say? We gained about half a mil, or we changed it by about half a mil. This has come down to 2.5 from 6 or 645. So that's quite a lot of reduction in the bellying, which is good, but it's not immediately turned into a significant reduction in the action. But what I have noticed is that because is this even possible? Could that increase the break angle? That came down, it's flattened out a little bit. Does that increase the break angle? It looked like it has, but I can't see how that is possible. But okay, let's not worry about that. So what I think I want to do with this is don't like that nut. Give me a plectrum. So, okay, that's interesting about the relative thing. Relative height and the reduction of the saddle, sorry, reduction of the belly. The other thing I forgot to mention is that we've got quite a lot of relief on this neck, so that's another thing I want to alter slightly. While I say while we've got a chance, it means we have to remove the fishman for a minute with the right driver. Looks like somebody's taken the wrong screwdriver to this already, so it's doubly important to get the right size. Thank you. Right, let's see what we've got. So we want to straighten this out a little bit. I can get a handy happy fit. Oh, I see. Okay. How many miles away is this hex key? Probably only I'm going to be able to do it with the darned thing off. I say it's quite a way under. I didn't look up underneath there with the camera. I should have done, because the hex key appears to be long and annoying. Can I reach it with this? I don't think I can. No, I can't. Look at that. It needs to be longer. Let's put a camera in there and have another quick look. That's annoying. Can I even see? No, camera. Not really good that I put the strings back on, because now I want to see in here and I can't get an easy access. I'll have to take them off again. Okay, so the hex key adjuster lives further down there, out of reach. So it's only on this first bit of the thing. Okay, time to take the strings off. So what I also think, at this point of taking the strings off, we know what the action was. Let's just double check. We said the action had gone down by 0.5 mil, didn't we? Sorry, that's rattling a bit. 0.5 mil. So from 3.5 to 3, yeah, we're just over 0.5 mil. Just under 2.5, just about 0.5 mil. So what we really want, let's just write it out. So we've now gone to 3 and 2.6-ish. We really want, ideally, 2 and 1.5. So we'll go 1 again, so still 1 and 1. So 1 and 1. which translates into 1.5. So we want to take 1.5 off this saddle. Let's do that. And while I'm at it, let's move the... Ooh, that was interesting. A little flake of bone came out of the nut there. Like it had been done with super glue and dust or something. I don't think it has, but like a little skin of bone. Bonio. Right. So that's sort of staying out of the way. Not really. Should want to really ideally want to stick it to there just to keep it safe. What am I going to do? Oh yes, I'm going to lower the saddle a little bit. So this is the next bit of, can we make the adjustments we want without any destructive thing? And by destructive, I don't mean taking down the saddle, because I don't consider that destructive, since we can replace that at any time with a taller, or we can shim it if we had to. There's all manner of things we can do. This is quite a deeply set saddle, so it's going to be just a little bit difficult to get out. Okay, so I'm going to hang this from here for a minute, and we reckon that 1.5 millimeters off the whole thing is going to be our target. And we're going to see what that looks like. Now, the only question about this is we'll get close to the action we want, but like I say, the question is, does this have an impossibly negative effect on break angle? Now, let's say we get it playing great right now, and later on the Bridge Doctor does further reductions, as well as keeping it from further increases, preventing further increases. Let's say it reduces a little bit further, then all we have to do is shim the existing saddle a little bit, or if we want to, we can replace it if that feels the right thing to do. But right now, it doesn't hurt to go down to the best action we can get out of it. Okay, there's our 1.5 millimeters all the way across the board. Good. So this is going to be the sort of make or break as far as the break angle is concerned. But we shall see. There you go. There's our marker. Now, one of these things is you can do, if you've got loads to take off, you can always take a file to it, put it in a vise and take a file to it. That's one way of getting down a lot of material in one quick go. I'm going to try and just do the sanding block routine. This is a bone saddle, so that's cuts predictably and at a steady pace. Not the easiest to cut, but I'm trying to find there's still the good bits of sandpaper that are left here. So things slightly unexpected on this mission was how the Martin sound jack socket barrel goes in exactly the point that exactly the height that the bridge system wants to go in at, which is one thing that I noticed before, that the bridge system doesn't really give you a lot of leeway with. Don't have any up and down movement. You'd have to redesign the block, the whole unit for that. Still, the alternative is that it just points off slightly to one side, and the real issue about that is the amount off the center line that pushes the actual unit isn't so much as to be a major problem of any kind, so you don't have to worry about it. So when you're sanding down a piece like this to your desired height, you just have to be conscious of its base. Not the end of the world in this one, because it's sitting in a nice deep slot, and it's got a microphone pickup rather than a under saddle system. But very definitely, if you're working on a saddle on a guitar with an under saddle system, you need this to be exactly perpendicular to the perpendicular to the floor of the slot. Yeah, that's right, that's the words I'm looking for. They're all there in the right order. So yeah, as I say, when this is not sitting on a piezo saddle, piezo transducer, it's not quite so critical. So my 1.5 reduction here at the saddle aims to be a reduction of 1 as measured at the 12th, not 12th fret, the last fret, which is where I measure it, or 0.75 at the 12th fret if you measure it there. It's just a division of where you measure it in relation to the overall scale length. Anyway, so my 1.5 should give me about 1, close to 1. It's not precise. It's not exactly a subdivision of the overall length, but it's close enough. So fine tuning it there. Check the bottom. Make sure it's rectangular. No, perpendicular, square, 90 degrees. Close as I'll get, I think. I would reckon that's probably a tiny bit short. I'm stopping a fraction short. That's what I would call wimping out very slightly. I'm going to carry on just a little bit more on this side. Let's have a look. Right. Tip it forward very slightly. Are we good? Are we good? Almost there. Tiny bit of straightening up to do here. Okay, that's me. Right, so this is a good tester. This is where we find out whether the break angle's enough and we can get a good sounding guitar out of this without making any adjustments to the slots. Oh yes, now that's kind of low. That's still above the thing. That's our action adjusted. Let's get in here. See if we can make this adjustment. Can we get the tool in? Can we get it in? Can we get it in? No, we can't get it in. I need a different kind of wrench, which I don't have. That's not a 5mm one, is it? This is a 5mm, but it's not very long. This bugs me. I don't understand this. Where the hell can there be truss rod? I've gone crazy. I've gone crazy. I've gone crazy. That's inside the block. It's not anywhere near. It's inside like you need a different thing. I'm pretty certain of it, but I don't have such a thing. Nor so I've got a long one there, but that won't go in through there. Nice one. So, without a strangely unusual tool, I don't think I'm going to get the thing in there. No, that's not going to work. Right, got to rethink this one. We'll worry about that bit then a bit later. Let's just get back to see what we've got in terms of action and string break angles. So we get down to about 2 mils. The break angle now is very low, but it's still enough to play. It would be aided a little bit by that extra gap, which we'll see. 440, 440. Don't like that G slot. I think I'd be tempted to stay clear of the destructive thing at the moment, which we can. What I'd kind of rather do is play this for a bit and then only make a slight slotting on there if it's really necessary. So what I'm looking for right now is I'm looking to find me a line me up a nice bit of ebony to fill that little gap up. So I want to just flatten it down a little bit, which is the working top. There it is. So it's quite a little bit difficult to handle this ebony plug. I don't really want to have too much sticking out, but I'm going to, I suppose, because of the fact that it's on a curve. You can see it's going to be very snug fitting, but it won't be that deep on the back edge, so we're going to end up having to chisel or Dremel to begin with, and then very finely sand that. Now I'm curious about the truss rod business. That's annoyed me. I don't suppose there's one in here. You should have one to adjust it, but that would be good if it was. Oh well, guess what? Surprise, surprise. No truss rod adjuster. I've never come across a situation like that before, where there appears to be where the normal truss rod adjustment would start. It goes through into a encased thing, and there's sort of threads on the thing, but there's nothing in there. and there's nothing to bite into, and I don't know if that means the truss rod supposedly starts here. Let me just have a quick look. I know it's not good video, but Martin D20, oh, that's what it was, HD28, HD28, 28, fly, truss, tries, truss, rod adjustment, thanks, brilliant. I have to get one of these things. Oh well, I suppose it's useful to have. It's a long reach, long wait. Okay, no worries. I'll do the adjustment. I've got a week to do it, so I can get this in. It's only £8 for a thing. It's just a long. Excuse me. Pardon me. It's a long wait. Okay. Figured as much. So it's quite good because I think it means that the truss rod actually is a short one that only goes from there to there. So we have a playable thing. I think the best thing I need to do now is to get ready to glue in this little plug. And the thing about the plug is, it's going to be short on one side, tall on the other. So whichever surface I like isn't going to be an issue because I'm going to have to cut it back anyway. So the question is, we just got to get it tapped into wherever it will fit. So we're going to get ourselves a little bit of glue. I'm going to tighten it. We'll do one last little turn to tighten it. Make sure it's good. He says holding off for a moment. The reason I'm holding off for a moment, is there any likelihood we're going to need to readjust this? I don't think we're going to crank any more, much more tension into this. The only reason we wouldn't want to take this off, even if we made a new rod, we would want this still in place. So let's just make sure this is tightened. Yep, and ready to go. Yeah, so just treble checking. There might be a case for putting a different, there might be a case for putting a different rod in there, a bit slightly longer, in which case we can do all of that without making any adjustments to this thing here. So I want to basically go in as flat as I can, which means this underside is a better thing to do. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue around here. It won't take much actually. You can easily clean up any spills over the top. Run that through there. Again, not really that important. So we'll take the flat end down. Now, a bit that I can't quite tell is the grain direction. I thought I knew. All right, it's across that way. Across. Let's get this clear. Across that way. Across that way. I think. Right. There you go. Job done. Yes, I know it's a lump sticking out, but we're going to leave that to set overnight. Come back another day and we'll very carefully scalpel it. I said scalpel it. We'll very carefully cut it back and scalpel it, and that will be that. So we just want it to dry in place. Yeah, as far as I can see, the grain appears to be running across the bridge here in the opposite direction to the top. Sort of makes sense. And we'll just, that's going to go in flat against the screw, top of the screw, and I think that's as good as it's going to get. So we'll just leave it, let it dry and set. Okay, so just to conclude for today, because I think there is probably are going to need to do a little bit more looking at it another day, but for now we've got, I didn't measure it, while we're at it, let me measure it. So action wise, we've now got a last fret action of, that's actually gone lower. Oh well, there we go. We could lift, actually we're about 1.5 all the way across, which is really nice. Well, if it plays, don't do anything. We could put a tiny shim on the bottom of this just to lift it a fraction more, but it plays, so let's leave it like that for now. So we've got 1.5mm action all the way across. That'll be the best playing this guitar's ever done, for those who like a low action. But it's a considered, situation. Well, in that case, let's think about this. Let's get on and finish off here right now, because the only thing I'm going to do extra to this is to cut that back, trim it back, and hand sand and finish it. So actually, I think we can actually call this done, and then I'm going to do a tiny adjustment to the truss rod, which I'll do off camera anyway. So I think I'm going to get this finished for all intents and purposes now, apart from that little bit of carving and sanding, which will also then probably end up with a little bit of polishing. The only thing I'm not too thrilled about on this is the slight pinging on the G string, which means it's a little bit too, have we got it over here? Yeah, it's a little bit constricting. It's gripping in the nut slots, but I can just very gently widen this out a little bit, just to take away that likelihood. Let's have a look. Of course, in lowering the action, what we have got is quite a lot lower string, a lot lower action here. So it may be that really this does need a replacement nut, because it was playable, but it's almost on the verge. What we can do is we can restring it and play it, and if there's any problems we'll go and change it, because I know that originally Stu wanted to, well, it seemed like he wanted to keep the nut in place. Well, I think he did on the basis that he said he didn't have any tuning instability, but I would be tempted anyway to replace that with a Tusk one, and did I buy one specifically for this? Let's see. Okay, so I think we're going to. Yeah, I'm thinking now whether this is actually finishable today, because if I put the preamp back in there, I can't get to the truss rod with the new key, with the new hex key, and I can't get to the new hex key yet anyway, simply because for the obvious reason that I don't have it. So that will be in the post. How about, I think we've got the bulk of this done. How about, I think we need to put this away. I think I need to put potentially the tiniest amount of lift back on this saddle, and I would probably find my devices. Actually can't get it out now without a blade of some kind. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it, but we could lift it up by a few grains of tape, metal foil, which is a good way of doing it. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly assess its height now, and we'll go off the E notch. So we've got 5.52. Let's write that down. 5.52, and I will stick some, let's get a cutting board. Yes, so a few little details to take care of before it's done and dusted. Right. So this tin foil stuff is a really useful way of putting shims onto something. So it's a finite thickness. I don't quite know what it is, but you can build up a few layers if you just want to raise something very, very slightly. And I think I was aiming for 2 millimeters on that last fret, and it's actually currently 1.5, which is playing, but it was just a fraction lower than I originally had targeted for it. Now I've gone and done something that doesn't quite go the full length, does it? Egypt. And that's not what you want to do. You don't want to press it flat against there. You want to stick it like this. Right, just forget that. Forget that, start again. Yes, so anyway, what I am doing is I'm cutting the right length of foil now, and I'll put 3 or 4 layers of this on and see what we get as a height after that. So I'm about 0.5 mil between where I am and 0.5 mil in the other direction. So difficult to handle this stuff because it tends to stick wherever it folds and touches, and it's almost impossible to handle the darned piece because it's tall and thin. Okay, so there's the first layer of extra height. So what did I say, 552? We'll see how much 2 layers adds and then go from there. No, damn it. Thanks. Sticky fiddly stuff, basically. Like I say, really difficult to hold in place without chopping your own fingers off or letting it fall over and then fold up the rest of the bits you want to cut off. So there's 2 layers, and that raises it to 571. So that's 0.2 for 2 layers. Do 2 more layers and I think that will be enough. So yeah, it's always a nerve-wracking one, this Martin business, because I'm very aware of what I don't know. I'm also somebody, as I said, who works to a kind of logic, and if, for example, it was obvious to me that the only thing and the correct thing to do would be to go and spend 400, 500, 600 quid on getting this guitar neck repositioned, realigned on this guitar, then that's exactly what I would tell the customer to do, and that's exactly what I would do for him, even though I don't do it myself necessarily. I would get it done. But I go on the evidence of what I see, and so far it doesn't make sense that that's the only way, the one and only way that action on a guitar of this youth gets adjusted. And if it were the only way, then it's pretty much a disgrace, you know, or it's outrageous for the poor customer who's bought a guitar that has become unplayable within such a short space of time. You know, and if that turns out that's the price of it, you know, you have to pay £600 every 4 years for your Martin that'll become relatively unplayable. Well, I won't tire of saying that's not a good setup. So, you know, equally, if I saw anything that contradicted the impression I've got so far, that tells me that just about all, most if not all, acoustic guitars are on their way to being distorted and requiring you know, significant structural realignment. And you know, if I saw evidence to the contrary, then I'd revise that, but I don't, and I keep seeing them come through in that exact state of play or state of affairs. So, okay, long, bendy thing. That thing's got to be pretty long for this not to go down inside there and work. That's quite a long way in. Is that because we can't get it, can't lift it up, can't get it far enough through the hole because of its gets in the way of this bracing. I get you. So I have a long enough one, but not a bent enough one. And we'll do it from here. Yeah, typical, bloody typical. Right, well that's okay. I could do with one of those. Now, as to this nut, let's just have a quick look what we've got, because I don't like this nut at all. It's not making me happy in the slightest. We have one for Andy's Ozark for next week, which we need to keep at the front of the queue. We have a Gibson one, and a couple of things here. We have a block of Tusk. We have a black Tusk. Why have I got a black Tusk? Slotted. Don't know. But we've got it. So we have got, well, this was, let's have a look at this one. Go away. Too narrow, so that's definitely too narrow. I should write the E to E spacing on there for future reference, but I'll do it later. He said, knowing full well that I won't. I'll just leave it there and hope it matches. Okay, we've got one here which is a 1/4 inch, it's called, and it's black. It would fit on here colour-wise. Way under. So the E to E here is significant, and I think we're going to find it's an unusual length. .38, 39 probably. It's quite wide. Wow. 39. E to E 39. So I think I'm going to have to make a note of this and get one. So E to E 39. Full width. 46. Full width 46. And that doesn't go. What did we say? 39 with the E to E. That's quite unusual. That's not 39. Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to do it because I don't like, this is too low now, because it doesn't really account for any adjustment. I would rather replace it with a Tusk one and do it properly. And the thing is, it was low, it was very low prior to any adjustment, and now we've got an adjustment on the height. It's still going to be too low for my liking. Right. Okay. So I think we're in a good spot to put this away. Bridge doctor work is done. Our bridge doctor work here is done. So we've got a bit more to do. I didn't think it was going to run over, but that's not the end of the world. Got the bulk. That's in a good way there. We can get away without doing any cutting there, which I'm pleased about. We'll tidy up that and sand it back to flush. We will make a small adjustment to the truss rod. We'll fit the correct nut, which I can, if I can find the right thing. This has been quite nicely tailored to fit. I mean, it's nice, but it's now, it was marginal before, but now it's too low for any downward adjustment. And then, well, I guess we'll leave this sit for a few days in its box with the rod of what's it's doing its thing. Let's see if there are any more reasonable adjustment left in here. I mean, the only turns we're making at this point in time are not quarter turns. They're about 1/16th turn, no, 8th turns maybe. So I think we're kind of not going to do much. There's a bit more turning. Let's leave it there. Ooh, we'll measure it again when we come back to see it, because for all I know it might even be flatter again. Right, that's good for now. Not quite complete, but it's going very much in the right direction, which I'm happy about. Yeah, and it played even at the break angle we had. It played great. All I've had to do then, all I've done is improve it by just raising it a tiny fraction, so we know it will play as well, if not slightly better, because we'll have a tiny bit more break angle without doing the slots. So I'm pleased with that. Okay, thanks for watching. See you for the next section. Okay, so here we are, staring at the Martin. Now, just come down for a walk down this end. I'm having to make a nut from scratch because the original bone nut became too low with the new lower action. So we have to make a new nut. So I've made that from a block of tusk. I did actually buy a replacement one for the right spacing, but it's too thin. I don't know what guitar that comes off. It's too thin front to back. I could have boosted it, and I suppose that's a backup in case I actually needed to, but this is a very, very wide fitting, and it also needs a bit of careful sculpting. As you can see, it's sort of, well, you might not be able to see it from above. You can see it widens, so I've had to sculpt it wider to go follow the it's not a straight slot. Anyway, so I'm at the stage now where I have to put the strings on, because I've got a couple of things left to do. Obviously we've had the what's that thing called, you know, the doctor or the system in place for a while, and for a few days now, with no strings on. So now I need to cut the slots exactly for this guitar. So I need the strings on. I haven't got a spare set, a sacrificial stret set of strings, but I have a slightly challenge on this side too. This thing no longer works. You can see there's gouges where it's been sort of worn out trying to get it to lock in place, and it doesn't close up small enough to grab the wood here. It's too thin of a top. That was very American. Too thin a top. Anyway, the point being I've had to put some padding under there as well. So when it comes to it, it's got a sticky 3M thing, and it's going to sort of stick on. So I can't stick it on until I've got the strings on and I've checked the truss rod, because you can't adjust the truss rod with that in place. And there's the Martin-esque truss rod. So I'm going to be very careful, and I'm going to fit the Elixir strings, and I'm going to have to work round them to, first of all, get the think sprains. I have to get the tension up, get the action right, get the relief right, make sure it's right, and then I'm going to have to, yikes, come on. In fact, why don't I just pull all of these out first? Yeah, I'm going to get the action right, tension right, and then we'll see what we need to do with any final tweaks on relief. I've done a tweak already, but it's obviously blind because one can't see without strings on, and one can't put strings on quite yet. So here we have the first string to go on, and the nut is cut to size, glued, and I'm ready to just do the slots. Now once I've done the slots, I can also reduce the nut a little bit further once I've got to the first fret action that I'm happy with. Obviously that'll be a slightly later thing to do. Now it's miles high at the moment, which is fine, I don't mind that. Pull back my frets worth, hold it on, and do it up. So this these strings will be in and out of the slots a little bit to get the action right. Also we'll need to see whether we do need to raise up the saddle any, because I set it up the other day for the sort of perfect ultra low action, but of course we may have had some modification or movement in the bridge doctor, or the bridge system may have done more work, and that's a bit of an unknown really, how the top reacts. Now it has clearly straightened or flattened out some of the top, without a doubt it did some of that. What we don't know is when, if and when, where and when it stops, so it's a bit of a trial. I mean, look at it on the plus side, that if it continues to adjust and revert the top to nice flat, bring it down under tension, then we can, the worst we have to do is replace the saddle with a little bit of a taller saddle, or shim it. So that's not a bad outcome. So it would be a luxury problem, if you like. Look at that, it'll look beautiful. So what I'm doing at the moment, I'm just checking the spacing. The filing nut slots is actually quite a tricky, that's the wrong end of the string. It's quite a tricky thing, because as the slot cuts downwards, it can wander off to the side, and you end up, when you finally sort of trim back the overall size or top of the nut, you can actually find you've gone a bit sideways and you've got a little bit of uneven spacing. So that needs a bit more of a cut in there to get it to stay in place. Yeah, so getting it to stay in the right plane is quite important. We just need them to stay in place for the time being. Okay, so left hand shuffle. Well, last night was fun. We went down to customer and friend John and Vanessa's, partly to hand back 2 guitars that I worked on, and also to watch the second part of the Beatles thing, of which I haven't seen any of the parts so far, so this was oh no, I'm not here. Claire, what does she want? Oh, hold on a sec. Hello? Oh, hang on. Yeah, you're on camera, my dear. You're live in the house. What can I do you for?
I'm in the bathroom. And
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So the first thing to know is it's damp underneath.
Yeah.
The second thing to know is that it's perished.
Yeah, the rubber.
Badly.
Yeah, the rubber will be useless. Yeah.
Yeah, so just all broke off. So the question is, how can I get this off?
How can you get what?
That sticky stuff off.
Scrape it off with a blade.
I've been doing that.
You have to scrape it more with more blade.
There's nothing like that.
No, there's no solvent, I don't think, unfortunately. I think it has to do, I mean, I remember from before, it's just been a matter of painstaking cutting into it, scraping it flush. And it's a pain because it sort of wants to bounce all over the place.
Yeah. Well, I've done a bit. It's okay. I'm just, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a coat of paint on now. On the other side.
Okay.
And come back to it, because I've got really sore fingers now. But the blind
hole maker, drill. Right. So you're saying bring back some drilling stuff. Right.
I've got some squeezy stuff to put down the silicone stuff.
Yeah.
I thought I'd put that down.
Yeah, but it's all about getting the clean up first, isn't it?
Yeah, clean first, and then put that stuff over that as well, so that it's got a double protection.
Right. So when you say the stuff underneath is wet, you mean is there wood in there, or because it goes from tile to join the edge of the bath, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, the edge of the bath joins.
Yeah.
Because you would expect that damp.
That's damp. Well, I bet the best thing to do then is to leave it open to the air for a few days before we try do anything.
Yeah, I was going to get the hair dryer actually.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. It's just patches. I think.
Well,
I think it's,
drying it out is the important thing.
yeah. What is the end bit? Oh, it's wood. It's wood.
Stuart Martin.
Oh, it's coming off a bit now.
Yeah, it's just boring. You need a very small child from the Victorian era to be working as slave labour and.
So, talking of small children, we had a chat, and Alice got down. She went to the big thing. She came back and she said to me, "I've got a big poo."
Censored. I'll have to declare rude subject material to YouTube now. Yeah. She done one. Yeah. Very good.
Well, not dear. Yeah, but she had. And then Holly said, "Have you?" And she shook her head and said no. But she had.
Yes,
So
yes.
sweet. Anyway, okay.
That's good. That's good. That's slightly to one side.
To try and get this done. I can't bear it. Have finished.
Okay.
Okie dokie.
All right. Well, I'm
Okay now.
yeah. I'm struggling with the relative pain in the which is making a nut from scratch for the Martin, and it is getting the exact positioning of the of the slots is really difficult.
What you get for having such an expensive guitar that needs a custom.
No, I think it's a difficult thing to get it absolutely precise on anything. So I'm just having to move one string fractionally to one side because it's fractionally too far to one side. Anyway, but it's taking longer than I've got. But hey, you know how it is.
So clever being able to do any of it.
Oh, that's very sweet.
It's so funny seeing. Oh, Holly said she'd been watching it with Joe.
The Beatles. I was just
Yeah.
talking about it.
Music very much.
Who doesn't?
And Holly.
Ah.
I was really surprised. But then, thought she's grown up with something completely different, really.
She's grown up with non-music. Yeah.
She's very eclectic in her choice of music, but I was surprised. But I suppose I didn't really play it much.
That's what those youngsters like to think they are eclectic when they're just crap taste.
Well,
I'm only kidding.
she likes musical, and she likes classical, she has got a wide ranging sense of. Anyway, I was surprised. But she found it quite fascinating too. And,
Yeah.
but what was funny is, we weren't really prima donnas about the guitars anyway, shit. But now, everybody would be like carrying them in hermetically sealed.
Everyone be like. Pop stars be like.
Yeah, it was really.
Well, yeah, they weren't precious.
precious.
They weren't precious, but that's because they played fantastic gigs in Hamburg on, you know, biscuit tins with strings on and stuff, you know. Good for them. Bless them. Anyway,
It's really stayed with me. Actually, that
it's very what?
bit that we've watched, it's really stayed with me.
Yeah, yeah, it's wonderfully thought-provoking, I have to say.
And Holly said something about them being, prolific and nice, There's drugs, Holly. That's what being stoned and taking loads of speed does for you. Right, better go before I chop my fingers off. You know me, that's the likely scenario.
get what you can done. I'll do the same.
Yeah. I'm a bit hot today. I'm a bit hot.
Okay. Well, listen, I've had to run my alternative heating device.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's
Hot
It-
water bottle.
no, the blowery thing, which is actually working, but it's
Oh God, get a new one.
yeah, no, it's okay. It's better than nothing, but yeah, it's a kind of funny sort of heat,
You can't beat without warm.
heating the air. Right, listen, I better go because I've got a finishing touch to this Martin. So, all right, see you in a bit later.
See you in a while.
Bye, love. Quality of the call, excellent. Submit. No, I don't want to rate it. Thank you. Right, so now we have sorry about that little interlude. Now we have the opportunity to that's pick up. Careful. I'm going to check the connect relief, and that's quite flat. Actually, you know what? That's nice. Obviously, we can't play this because these slots are way too high. So next thing we need is wherever it's gone. There it is. The thing. What's it? Metric thing. Metric thing? No, that's not what called a metric thing. It's called the thingies. Right. So this thing, right, yeah, the thing about the relief is this. If I don't adjust it now, I lose my opportunity to adjust it at all. And it's this bizarrely long-winded, shove it in a hole device, which really doesn't want to play ball with the strings. And actually, it's kind of quite a struggle to get it in. I found it very difficult to actually make it bite at all. So I think that's almost spot on, or it could do with a tenth of a turn or a 12th of a turn counterclockwise. But I'll do that when the strings are off to the side. So now the question I've got is to get the actions, the nut slots down to the right height. Now I can afford to slack the strings off at this point because I'm going to work outwards from the G outwards and then from the D outwards. And I've got a little note here that's going to tell me where I've also got to go. Now I don't need full tension, I just need enough tension that this is going to go nicely into the slot. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just slightly flatten off this original hole because I want to just move it ever so slightly to one side, and I kind of do that by rounding off this first one. I mean, it's the tiniest of movements to the side. We've got enough room to do it, so I'm flattening out the original area. Now it's kind of gone too far to one side, which is okay. Well, not okay, but I'm going to just mark it again and make sure I'm on the spot. And actually that looks, the bottom of that slot looked absolutely spot on. So I don't think I've really got too much to worry about with that one. Let's just remake that one. Okay, let's work with that slot. We'll go with that. So here we are at our target. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the I'm going to use the 10 gauge, which is slightly smaller but I'll start with these to do the cutting. 10 gauge. Now we're going from 12, so I suppose I could go down with this one, so 13 gauge, but we're not going 13, we're going 13, 17, 26, 13, 17 to 26, so we go 26 on this one, and we'll use this to cut down the slot. Very very quick cutters, these Hoscos, so I'm not going to overdo it, am I? No, but I'm cutting backwards a little bit at a time. I'm going for the 40.40 over the first fret, which is nice and low, but not too low. So I don't trust these files. I've used them before and they cut so well that I've just run into problems straight away, and I can't obviously afford to do that. Another way to do it is to use the more familiar V-notch file, but I'm going to make myself do this. We're talking such tiny gaps now, we have to be very careful. It's almost there. So we want the slope to be heading backwards. I tell you what, why don't I treat you to a bit more of a close-up for this intricate work. 26. Very careful cutting. That's almost spot on. I'm going to call that George, as they used to say in the Caribbean. A little bit more tension, but not too much. Let's have a look at this one. Actually, we're okay. A tiny movement on the D that we've got to do in a minute, just slightly to one side. Okay, so this one will go straight down on this one, and so we're going backwards to the 17, and then we'll end up on the 13 at the last bit. So backwards cut. Well, we don't have full tension. Backwards cut. And of course, when using these, you have to keep your eye on the tuner post, because you run the risk of crashing into those when you're sawing away. Quite a bit to go down here. I might actually go thinner on this because this looks a little bit too big for what I want. So I'm going to go with 13, although it's probably more than that. Bong. Okay, here we go, heading in the right direction. Now all that will happen is that at this size I'm going to do it like this, and then I'll check in tuning if it's too tight. We'll make adjustments, and that's obviously not the right tension. We'll do a bit more, a little bit over the 0.4. Pull this to one side, a little bit more downwards cutting. Nice. I like the way it looks. Stop there. Right, well, I don't want this at full tension. It's nicely positioned. I'm going to use the 10 for this, since the 13 worked well on the previous one. I'm just going to pull to one side, and we'll go with the 10. Now, we have to watch out for the peg, tuner post I should say. Okay, looking good. the hole looks bigger at this point. The slot looks bigger because it's cutting the thick part. The notch widens up as you go deeper, so the top of the hole looks much bigger than it actually the notch will be when we file the nut back down. Because that's what I'll do as a final thing here. I'll reshape the nut, get rid of the excess material that we don't need. And just really getting this down to the bottom. And I'm just really going to be keen to see what the action is when all said and done, courtesy of the bridge system, not the Doctor, because that's the other device. JLD makes two devices. It makes the bridge Doctor and the bridge system, and most people like me misname this thing I fitted here. We misname it the bridge Doctor, when in fact that's about right for me, when in fact it's the bridge system. This one's the bridge system. So if we're sticking to these numbers, that was the 10, the 13 and the 17, and now we're going to go D outwards. A bit more earth moving to do here, so it's a bit more sort of pushing. Now this needs a tiny move to the side, to the right, no, towards you, the camera, and that will be okay. Let's make the first cut. I'll try and recut this with a D. No, what am I talking about? I'll try and make the mark first and then follow the mark. It's so close to being the original, it's hardly noticeable, but let's push that in there and see if we can make it work. That looks right. Let's follow that down. So we're going to work with the 26 here, and we're going to take that down in the furthest of these two slots. Have a look. That looks right. So again, we're looking for the 40 mils, 0.4 of a mil, and 26. That looks superb. I ain't going to mess with that any further. Looks good, looks good, looks good, looks good. Again, we're not using the full tension here, but just enough to get going with, and so that we know that the string sits in the hole. It's not sitting somewhere halfway up or halfway down. Right, now this has got to go quite a long way, so it's going to require a fair bit of cutting. I've got to do it whilst watching out. That's pretty good actually, almost there. Whilst watching out for the bloody hell, that's quite stiff. Watching out for the low level. Now, let me just see this. Let's put this in place. Yep, that's pretty good. Very difficult to get those 1,000,000% right. Where it ends up, that's there, that's okay, that's okay. It's a fraction to the right. Let's see if I can do this one. Right, the 46. Let's just do the 46 to get this going. That's good. Now I think this means we need to move this a tiny weeny fraction, which means I'm going to just take it down. This is all, most of this is going to be taken off the nut anyway, so all I'm doing here is just bringing down this slot, bottoming it out, so I can just move the bottom part of it a fraction to this side, which is quite a difficult thing to do. Let's Let's do a little bit more leveling out first. So I want to drop there, but really I want that there on the edge of that slot. So if we just bottom it out, if we just bottom it out, we'll be all right. And we're going in there and slightly to one side, which is there. Okay, almost there. Yeah, so the missus, as you can tell, was also moved by the Beatles video of yesterday. No, not yesterday video, but you know what I mean. Yesterday's watching thing, you know, and it's without a doubt it makes you think of it. This thing doesn't want to go sideways, whatever I do. It's determined not to go sideways. Now here we would be doing the 36, so let's try and convince it to go a little bit sideways. That's better. Well done. Blimey. Whew. That's some undertaking. It's just a fraction on the lower side than I want. We'll come back to that. I mean, if it's 3, it's absolutely fine. If it's any lower, I'm not happy. It's 3. Okay, I'll live with that and we'll bring the others to match. But that's as low as I would go. But let's do the low E first. This, I mean, when you're talking about such small measurements now, it's a very difficult proposition to get so fine and not overcut. Very difficult not to overcut when you're working to such tiny tolerances. Especially as the material you're working on gets thicker and thicker, it sort of encourages you overcutting. Overcutting becomes very easy all of a sudden. Angle not right. Let's cut the angle back. It's too what's the word? Not slopey enough. That's the problem as well when you've got very little room to move. You need to cut back the angle without taking the depth down. See, this is where we could really do with taking off a lot of the excess material first, because we're working with much more material on the nut than we should do. Yeah, you see that was the backward slope not being good. So what I suggest we do now is to just file the rest of this back. We know where we are with everything but the low E at the moment, so we can take everything down away from, excess material can be gone. So we use a file and get rid of it. All of this stuff at the ends is excess. So let's get a file suitable. Actually, the rasp is the rasp is probably a good idea. Take quite a bit in one go, and somewhere else we've got a file, a regular file. So the rasp can do quite a lot in one go if we're careful. Sandpaper's good too, but either which way you're going to have to take it easy. Give me some fast undoing, please. Thank you. I mean, really it could do with the strings being off, but then again they're sort of critical for checking our progress, so unfortunately I can't get rid of them. They need to be to hand somewhere. Okay, down you go. Right, so we can now concentrate on removing all that is not required. As you can see, it's quite a lot. Granules of tusk. So it might seem like a lot to be removing, but we've got a real extreme depth of slots to get rid of the excess material, and around on the edge here, none of which is required, all of which is surplus really. Where I can see the file and where it goes. Okay, so we're now sort of at the sort of height we need to be. Go away, clean the slots. Yep, good. So my main concern now would just to be make sure that these are all pointing backwards where they need to be. and I think they pretty much say they are. That one's back. That one's definitely back. A bit more. That one's back. Not so much, but we'll make it so. But again, doing it with also keeping an eye on this top, it's very easy to fire away and scrape that top, which is a pain. 26, 36 and 46. Okay, so 26, not very sloping backwards, so a bit of extra to do there. Good. 36. And 46 we've done. Okay. Good. So I think everything is pretty good. What I will do now is I want to file a little bit smoother. All the way, of course, being careful not to hit the headstock. And then we've got a little bit of very light grit to run down here, and we can also go over the ends a little bit just to round that off, make sure they're not sharp in any way. And the ends here. Lovely jubbly. Right, let's get the strings back in their little grooves, and we're going to go over and just check everything to the 0.3 of a mil action that the low A, the A is on. So let's tighten up. Ah, damn. Just one thing, while I was at it, I was going to make the tiniest adjustments on the truss rod, wasn't I? Good idea. Remember things you had to do. Where are you? You are here. Right, so we wanted a tiny bit more relief in the neck. Oh boy, can we even get it in there? Aha! What did we say? Tiny bit of counter. That's it. That's done. Jolly good. Let's take this off while we're at it. There's a little bit of polishing left to do on this guitar top, or scratch remover, polish up, just to get rid of some baked on watermarks and stuff. Okay, dokey. Let's get these up a bit more tension. Let's just go with the top three again briefly, quickly. Out of your notch. That'll do. Out of your notch and into your correct one, please. That's quite a bit higher. 13. Okay, we're getting there. We're almost there. You can see how tiny the adjustments are. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. God blimey. You don't half get there quickly. This is why I like adjustable nuts, ladies and gentlemen. I really do. That's good, I think. Yep. Take these out. So we're looking for the 26. 26. I like it. That one's good. And this one follows on 46. That's pretty good actually. Let's take a tiny bit more. 46. Such fiddliness. Sorry, I've probably got the worst camera angle ever. Okay, now hopefully we've arrived at a combination of things. Oh, the last piece of the pumpkin. God, right, I'm going to get this bit on now. Okay, that's good for an acoustic. That's good. I'm happy with that. Now, rather stupidly, I forgot one thing. As you can imagine. Let's zoom you out. Sorry, I've got a terrible view here. What I'm now trying to do is I've got to get this blasted pickup arrangement put in place. So this is the last time I'm going to undo these strings because we're done at that point. What I can do while I'm at it is go for the, well I could if I had any, give the last bit of sanding. I'll do a bit of 400 grit here, a little bit of sanding on the edge of the nut just to smooth it out. Get rid of any file marks. And that's just a final cosmetic-y thing. Very small amount of wear. Right, you're done. You're done. Now, as for you, come here. Right, we've got to try and get this little beauty on here in such a way that it bleeding well stays where we put it. Ah, that little piece has come out. Doesn't want to hold this little bit of sticky stuff, unfortunately. It's trying not to play the game. I'm just really trying to expand the gripping power, because as it currently stands, it's got a pretty poor tightening arrangement. In fact, these screws are nigh on buggered, and they really don't want to hold this pickup in place, so we're just going to have to do our best. I mean, the sponge will give it a little bit of extra grip. That's all I can say. A little bit of 3M sponge, just adding a little tiny bit to it. Right, so that's the clean that. That's the biz. We could oil this. It's an ebony board, but we could put a little tiny bit of oil on there. A little bit of cleaning. The frets were very clean as they started out. This gets a bit of residual dirt off the fretboard. Keep the strings out of the way for the minute. Right, and then we'll be ready to close the patient up, and this is where we're going to put it under load and hopefully observe what happens over the next few days. You know, in an ideal world, if we're lucky, in a funny sort of way, what we kind of hope to find is the action becoming too low. That sounds a bit odd, having gone to all this trouble to set it up, but you know, if the whatchamacallit, the bridge system is doing its job, then we will find it will continue to flatten the top a little bit more over time. Hopefully, I kind of, in a way, hope it's done its work now, and it's just from this point going to ensure that the whatchamacallit ensure that the bridge doesn't rotate forward anymore now, and it's going to stay in place. Whee! There's still a fair bit of oh, that's because that's back to front. Spotted. Oops. Sorry, I didn't want to do this again, but I found I have to. The saddles come out at some point and got put back in the wrong way round. That's really annoying. That's the final indignation. Right, remove the saddle. Come on, I thought that was looking a bit good at that end. Come on, saddle lifting devices. Thank you. How did that happen? Right. Probably better the other way around. Mainly, in fact, that would affect the intonation, which of course we don't want to have a negative, incorrect intonation, so and finally, still some break angle, which is not bad at all. Wow. What a low action. Let us stretch out the strings a little bit. Yeah, so bottom line with all of this is when you come to make big adjustments, like fitting a bridge system, lots will change, so you have to be prepared for everything else to change as well with it. So the break angle is about 2 degrees. A bit of old work debris coming out there. Break angle over the strings is now about 1 to 2 degrees, which actually is a lot better than I thought it would be. See over the top E string there? That's actually enough to play without going into any destructive adjustments to the slot. So I don't think we need to do that. I don't think there's not really any downside to leaving it where it is. So I'm just going to turn my heater off right now because it's starting to get me just about right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put some nice scratch remover on here just to clean up sort of a bit of old historical goop and some from what I've done here. Get my fingerprints off it, and then I think we're done, short of taking some measurements to see, so we can kind of keep track of what, if anything, continues to happen to the guitar top with the bridge system in place. But so far it's certainly reduced it with the strings off, and I'll have a look in a minute when I've just done this bit of polish. We'll have a look and just make sure that I'll put a bit on the sides. We'll make sure that it's or check it for measurements on the with a ruler across the top, and we had measured on just one side only, i.e. by sort of maximizing it on both sides just to read it off one side, so it's only really half that, but it was reading about 6 millimeters when I started. Now obviously we got the Doctor system in place, and we should see a difference. I'm not expecting it to be massively different. I'm expecting it to be different, that's for sure, but I'm realistic. I think part of the hope is that we arrest the ongoing bellying of the guitar top to stop the action rising higher in this next period of its life, prior to at some point eventually ending up being in need of a reset. I think one of the things I discovered along my research, not having taken the neck off one of these before, I think I discovered that these do have bolt-on necks. What I found is to be correct. But they hide, the bolts appear to hide below the or behind the block that's placed at the end here. Why that's the case, why they put something to cover up the access to the bolts, neck bolts, is slightly beyond me, and I'm kind of assuming that I've read that right, and that I could actually be wrong, and these models might not have easy access bolts. But anyway, it seemed from the from their factory tour, it would seem that they're made with bolt-on necks, which will make the shimming it an easier task for somebody, but it isn't something I do or feel qualified to do. But as you can see, when there's some improvement to be made for a lot less money, relatively speaking, then I think it seems to make sense to go down that route first of all, if you can. And really, apart from fitting a bridge system to arrest any further bellying, I don't think this is a particularly problematic tweak. The only thing you might need to replace here is if the action changes substantially again, is a replacement nut, replacement saddle. Having kind of done research on the bridge system over a few years, most people seem very much in favour of it, and having originally taken my cue from Stu Mac, who I don't think were marketing it, or I think they listed it for sale, but I don't think they had a skin in the game, and certainly not to the point where they would make dubious or irresponsible claims for it. So I took them at their word. Right. Ooh, okay. I am done, and we have the Martin ready to go. This is very low, and it may not be perfectly in tune. Still a bit of tuning to take care of. Now, what I'm interested in is to know what's happening with the height of the dangle here. Let's have a quick look. So with let's get my measurer thing. So we're going to gently see what we've got at a maximum stretch at the edge. It's quite difficult to do, obviously, because I've got a top and that lifts up, so as close as I can get to measuring one side. That's down at about just under 2.5 mils. Considering that was 6 measured on that side before, so it means between the two sides it's effectively about 1.5 mil off the level, and that actually looks pretty good. That is pretty good. So we've reduced the action now. Let's see what it finally comes out at. A whiff above 2 and 1.5. So that's where I was aiming for in the first place. Bonk. and lower and lovelier and lighter. And we've got a nut that doesn't ping and hold, because that other nut was doing that, even though Stu didn't particularly pick up on it. It was when I was moving the strings around, it was tweaking, cleeking and beaking and peaking and pinking and pinging and dinging and stuff. And as soon as you hear that, you know it's going to be holding the thing out of tune. So there you have it. Controversial, possibly. We have the Gibson Martin HD28 new nut, bridge system fitted, almost invisible. I mean, you could hardly tell that's in there. That propped up a little bit to fit back on. Everything else lowered action, new strings on, ready to go in the box. So thank you for watching my ideas. I've got a bit more stuff to do here before heading home for today. Tonight's band practice, new covers band, so that's a nice distraction, something different to do. So yeah, look forward to seeing you. Oh, the next one is going to be, of this sequence, is going to be Andy's Ozark parlour guitar tomorrow, and that should be a more straightforward action lowering, new strings, clean up, setup. But this one, this one was quite a challenge. Interesting that Stu's Tokai, vintage Tokai Strat, is also turning out to be in need of more than we first started it. But that's the kind of thing when you get to that age. This Martin is obviously much newer, but the Tokai is really definitely at its limits in terms of what it needs. Its frets are worn out, so I'm going to need some new frets. Anyway, thanks for watching. See you again very soon.